I'm not getting all the Ron Washington hate. I mean, I get it. It was probably the most predictable outcome when we found out that he was taking this job as manager of the Los Angeles, California Angels of Anaheim, LA, Angeles, California. But it's still a little shocking. Like we knew this was coming because this is what happens to any manager, regardless of their status in the game or with the respective franchise. This is a perfect example why I want Jason Varitek to stay put. I've said that for years now. I don't want his name ever mentioned in conversations for Red Sox managerial vacancies ever. Stay put. What a crazy way for this game to end on Tuesday. Or was it Wednesday? No, today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday.
Tuesday night.
Yep.
7-6 loss to the Cardinals. Luis Guillorme comes to the plate with the bases loaded and is given in the bottom of the eighth and is given the squeeze bunt sign, or is informed that he needs to lay down a squeeze bunt, whether it was before his at-bat or during the at-bat or as his at-bat was the beginning. At some point was given notice that he needed to lay a bunt down, and boy, did he not. Squeeze play, I think it was Zach Nito. He's making his way home from third. So you could, we know it wasn't a safety squeeze. I don't know if it was a full-on suicide squeeze because it
seemed that way.
It seemed like it took Zach a minute to make it to the plate.
Yeah.
Although he maybe have hesitated a little bit, maybe tried to make something out of it before it was too late, but it certainly wasn't a safety squeeze. So with that said, because I think that's a very important detail that a lot of people are missing. And we were talking about it before we hopped on. I initially was planning on this being a rather brief segment, but as the day went on and I'm reading more into Angels fans' thoughts and just general onlookers, bystanders that wanted to share their thoughts on how this situation played out, I'm seeing a lot of people commenting on the play itself that clearly have never played baseball a day in their life. And I'm not sitting here trying to pull like what do they know? We at least played baseball. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm simply saying there are nuances to what happened that without that context would make it very easy to look at how the play ended up or developed, unfolded, and go, oh, well, Ron Washington's an idiot. That's not on Luis. That's on Ron. I'm not sitting here trying to absolve Ron Washington of any fault here because he dealt with the post-game presser a little bit too strongly. So we'll get to that. But the play itself, a squeeze or a suicide squeeze is where the runner on third is advancing to home.
The second pitcher chooses to go home, that's when they take off.
When the pitcher commits to the plate, that's when he's taken off. And you better hope and pray as the hitter, or if you're a fan watching, that the guy that's up at the plate, you just better hope and pray that ball gets put down. Because if not, you see it play out exactly the way it played out in the Angels game. Your guy gets hosed at the plate, doesn't stand a chance, and the inning or however it progresses usually ends up not the way you want it to. So that's what's not being talked about enough, is the fact that you're literally taught in like youth travel baseball, high school, college, throw the bat at the ball if you have to, but you have to put the bat on the ball. And I don't care if it's 3 balls off the plate, because I saw a lot of people. I was literally just getting into it with a guy on Twitter before we hopped on. He was like, the ball is 3 feet off the plate. You need a telephone pole. It wasn't 3 feet off the plate. It was 3 feet off the plate if you look at where the catcher received it. But when it crosses the plane of the plate, you can get a bat on that. He just wasn't able to get a bat on it. And you're going, well, how could he get a bat on it? You have to throw the bat at the ball if necessary. You have to sacrifice any semblance of posture that you have to make sure that you can reach beyond the plate to have full coverage of even the zone outside of the zone to make sure that you get the ball down. And he didn't do that. And that's exactly what Ron Washington was talking about after the game. Again, he got into a little bit with the quotes there, which we'll touch on. But what were your thoughts on how the play panned out?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. This is a squeeze. I don't know what you did, but like in high school and college, like it was mixed in during BP. Like you would start your round with, if it was your first round, you typically go like, I'm going to go oppo or hit and runs. It's situational, right? So every BP hitter has a situational round to start. You start with bunts. My college coach would mix in squeeze opportunities in there, and he would purposely throw weird pitches. He would throw at you, he would throw wild, he would spike one, and like if you missed 2 in a row, that round was over and you're out. Like I would get kicked out. That would happen at certain levels. I don't know. I highly doubt this is being practiced. This is one of the things where like this is a very old school play. Ron Washington is a very old school baseball mind. He mentioned that, he didn't feel good about the left on left. He didn't want to hit into a double play. So this is what he called. And like for fans that are getting on him, I'm not going to get to the comments yet. We'll get to that in here in a sec. But like the play call it's just one of those. He's a genius if it pans out, and he's an idiot if it goes wrong. And that's just how it goes. But yeah, I mean, like this is something we're taught. I don't think it's practiced a lot anymore. I don't think it's practiced enough. I can't speak specifically for Angels practices or pregame stuff. Maybe Ron has mixed that in. Maybe it's been a requirement. I don't know. But like there's a reason why it doesn't get called very often anymore. And there's a reason there's certain scenarios for it. I do feel for Guillorme because like he just got to town. Homie just got to LA. I know there's probably a connection that they had in Atlanta beforehand, but like tough comments to hear if you're brand new to the squad.
Yeah, in thinking about this incident, it really just reminded me or reinforced the fact that, and hear me when I say this, I'm not trying to just dump on the current generation of baseball fans, but there is, I feel like, a lack of context. Sure, they have numbers, they have data down to the decimal, but there's a lack of, for the ones that haven't played baseball at any level, there's a lack of understanding to the nuance. And you look at something like this that we've already explained, where it's like, if you just see the play develop and you don't really know what needs to be done or how that play is on a technical level supposed to develop, then you're going to look at that and go, again, Ron Washington's an idiot. But you have to understand the nuance. And another example of that is when you see these fans on Twitter using they'll post screenshots on Twitter of the K zone, and it'll be like a ball off the plate, when in reality it was much closer. But you know how those K zones work, like they're never perfect. And even if it's spot on, even if it's like a ball off the plate, the circle will be touching the line, the border of the strike zone, and they'll go, how did our guy get rung up? That's clearly off the plate. And the play in question was a guy leaving the bat on his shoulder with the bases loaded and 2 outs. Again, that's the lack of understanding the nuance of the game.
Or the vice versa role of a pitcher being wild all day and not getting one of those calls. And understanding that, like, if he's spraying it, the umpire is less likely to call that, and when it's a borderline pitch. So keep going. But yeah, nuances are all over the place that fans need to pick up on.
Yeah, like with the K-zone thing, it's like, sure, it's a ball on paper or on screen, and even in real life, in the game. But the nuance of the game is you have a human umpire behind the plate, and regardless what you think about it, you're going to have to deal with his zone that day. And if he's calling a zone wide, then you're going to have to expand your zone as a hitter. And so for this current generation of fans who are, and again, I'm not trying to just dump on them. I'm just simply bringing an observation forward, is that if you look at that, you go, like, these umpires suck. It's like, well, maybe, yeah, that's true at times in certain situations, but also shift some of that blame towards your hitter for not taking the bat off his shoulder with 2 strikes and 2 outs and the bases loaded. Like, you gotta put bat to ball, or at least make an attempt. I don't care how well he knows his zone. That's what you're taught, is to expand the zone with 2 strikes. So I've had enough of the K zone screenshots. That doesn't tell me anything. Like, that doesn't show me, it doesn't prove to me anything. You just have to understand the nuances of the game. That's all. But the quotes, man. Let's talk about his 1 or 2 liner afterwards. He said, Washington explained afterwards why he called for the squeeze bunt in that situation. He said, lefty on lefty and with a sinker baller on a left-hander, I didn't want him to hit into a double play. He said he can handle the bat. He didn't do the job. It wasn't anything I did wrong. He didn't do the job. Now, look, I get it, man. Guys, managers included, players, managers alike, you can get frustrated. You can get caught up in the heat of the moment, especially if it's the Los Angeles Angels of California, Anaheim, LA. That's a frustrating organization to be a part of right now. So I get it. Like, sometimes you may be a little slip of the tongue. But, I mean, for a guy that's been around the game that long, that's a tough line to drop on your guy.
I see both sides.
For the record, I do too. I'm just saying, I can see it from the other side.
I mean, I do hear what you're saying, just because of the fact that, like, again, he's brand new to the clubhouse. He just got traded there a couple days ago. It was like last week. Whether you're familiar with that player or not, like, that guy's still trying to fight for a role on this team. He's still trying to fight for relationships with his teammates. But we've been praising Ron Wash on a lot of different instances. We saw a moment where he kind of lit into Joe Adele for making an out. I think he didn't slide at second or something weird like that. We've seen him go out on visits to the mound and have a conversation with that pitcher. It's things that we grew up seeing in managers, and it's somewhat of a breath of fresh air that it feels like we're not just watching 2 calculators play each other. We're watching someone that has a finger on the pulse of the game. I think Ron Washington has a responsibility with this organization to correct things, to get things back on track. I would assume that was probably one of the reasons he was brought in, is to just get things back in order. In an old school mentality, he's not wrong. What he said wasn't wrong. Players have to have accountability. Do you say that to the public? Do you say that in a presser? Do you maybe save that moment for a closed door clubhouse, or even a closed office one-on-one with that player? Like, that's a different conversation. But like you said, like, the reason we didn't like this, and you posted that on Twitter today, it was a flashback of our conversation we had when this initial hire happened
back in November.
the reason we didn't like this is because it felt like it was an unwinnable situation for Ron Washington. Looking at this roster, looking at the position the organization is in, this was going to be frustrating from the jump. This was going to be, at best, a 500 ball club. At best case scenario. And in a guy in his resume and his history, what he's since done with the Braves and the relationship he's built with players and the admiration he's gotten and praise that he's gotten for his infield coaching abilities, like, and what seemed to be like this very much pro player coach mentality, being in this situation just felt unwinnable. And now I think we're just starting to see it unravel a little bit. I'm not saying like all the, the training wheels have fallen off and we're just going haywire here, but like when you get a cut and dry old school manager and you're asking his opinion in a frustrating season that's happened so far in an unwinnable situation, this is what you get. This is what you get. This is why we weren't about it. This is why we weren't feeling Ron Washington in this role. But I'm still with my guy. I'm still with Wash. He's not wrong. Again, Guillorme didn't get the bunt down. He didn't get wood on it. And that's a rule that's embedded into us since we started picking up a bat. Specifically in this situation, this is what you got to do. And I bet he would sit there and own up to it. It's just the tough thing of like delivering that message.
I'm trying to find the quote. He did acknowledge it. But yeah, sorry, keep going. I'm just looking for it.
Yeah, I think it's, you're probably getting a guy, and Guillorme, I think he's been around a little bit. He has typically been a role guy. He's typically getting, 2 or 3 games in a week. He's not a full-time, permanent marker into the lineup every day. So I think he understands that, like, he's got to make the best of his opportunities. I don't fully agree with the way Ron Wash went about it, but I don't disagree with what he said. And getting grown men to have some accountability for their jobs that they're getting paid a lot of money to do, this is what it takes to flip the script or flip the mentality or change what this organization has been about. And like, it's not easy coming in and saying, we're about winning here. We need to make this about winning. And we need to change some things. And I'm pro Ron Wash still, even after this.
Absolutely. And I'm in the same camp. I did find the quote. He said, when they asked him about it, he said, I haven't seen what Washington said, but he said, he made a good pitch. I didn't get it down. I've got to try to put a bat on it. That's it.
That's it.
So like, what are we talking about here?
Right.
These people talking about the ball being 64 feet off the plate. Not the case. It was clearly manageable enough that he indicates that he could have gotten a bat on it. So, or that he could at least try to put a bat on it, which is all you can ask for in a situation like that, because you know that you're not always going to have it in the zone, and that's going to sometimes trickle out of the zone a little bit, a few balls off the plate. You still got to try to put a bat on it.
You've taken the Augie Garrido exit off for a while now, yeah?
It's been a minute since we dropped the Augie audio.
I think for those unfamiliar, there's just certain coaches that have different types of expectations. And there's certain coaches that require a pursuit of perfection in certain things, specifically when it comes to fundamentals. There's just old school mentalities. When you talk to a scout, if he walks away from a game saying, I'm not interested in this high schooler because he walked off the mound or he walked off the field in between innings, it's Coach Corbin with Vanderbilt. I can't remember his name. Talks about how he didn't, Tim Corbin, thank you. Didn't recruit a kid because he asked for a Gatorade from his mom in the second inning and then didn't say thank you afterwards. He got up and left. There's just certain baseball coaches out there that they can look at those nuances that you mentioned. They can have a finger on the pulse a little bit differently than just results and stats. We can look at the game in different ways. And it doesn't mean Ron Washington is wrong. He's trying to fix this dumpster fire of an organization and correct things. And then if he's asking players to have accountability, that's what it's going to take. And I can guarantee that Ron Washington probably had a voice in trading for Guillorme and getting him onto this roster because of the prior relationship in Atlanta. So to sit here and judge from a 10,000 foot view, it's not cool. We don't know what's going on behind that clubhouse. We don't know if they've already made up. We don't know. But what I do know is that Ron Washington has forgotten more about baseball than any of us talking or listening to this podcast at the moment has ever learned. So let's back it down a little bit. Let my man do what he does and give it some time to fix this script that is the Los Angeles, California Angels of Los Angeles, LA.
Anaheim. California, LA.
Yeah.
Angeles. Yeah. Putting a bow on it, that tweet I just texted you, people are finally showing up on my thread in support of the same exact things we're saying.
Yes, sir.
Like that's the kind of, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, head over to my Twitter. You'll see my post about the whole Washington thing, and it's in the replies. But it was just people talking about how like if you didn't make an effort, if you didn't go all out, that you were going to hear it after the game. And somebody sent a picture of a kid just going all out.
And you can tell immediately if a hitter seems to be in a good position to make a bunt. That was a late show, and that was an ass out, half attempt swipe down at it. You knew that was coming, and it needs to be performed in a better way. You're a professional athlete, and that is something that, you know, in that tweet, like you said, that's a high schooler. Like we've been taught this for a while. Whether you practice it is a different conversation. Whether the game needs more of it or less of it is a different conversation. But either way, that was not a good enough effort on a very much definition do or die play.